What is going on, guys? It's your boy Business back here with another video. Today, as promised, I finally have a deck profile for you. And the first one we're going to be jumping into is a Bermuda Triangle Coral deck. Now, this is a bit of a budget deck, only because I'm using cards that I pulled from the Crystal Melodies booster boxes only. So it's good for you guys back at home if you want to make this deck. All you need is cards from that one pack. But I wouldn't say that this is the optimized version of this deck. It's just sort of a nice budget-friendly, fun deck to play, and it has still pretty much all the components you need to run very smoothly. With that said, let's just jump right in. We start off with one of Angelic Star Coral. She's just your Coral starter. When wrote upon, draw a card. Pretty basic. For our trigger lineup, I have 4 heals, and then all crits. Now, I'm a very aggressive player. I enjoy having the consistent crit pull. If I pull a trigger, I know it's going to be a crit, and this deck stacks crits pretty well on its own. And then having all these crits just really boosts up that damage. Now, as you noticed, there are no Sentinels in this deck because Crystal Melodies didn't have a trigger Sentinel. So I have to use the grade 1 Sentinel. That's one of the biggest flaws of this budget deck, is that ideally you'd like to have a Sentinel Sentinel PG, and since this one doesn't, you have to go with the grade 1. You need a PG in the deck. I mean, it's just like a must-have. But if you have them at home, I would highly suggest putting in either a crit or draw trigger Sentinel, just because it's a lot easier and you can replace this grade 1 with something a little better. Ooh. Next up, we have 4 Electro Techno Thico, and what she does is counterblast 1, put her into the soul, and give a coral card plus 15k. She's very good late game, especially when you're trying to make a big push, trying to get big damage on the board, and since corals are pretty much the main thing you want to be riding and having out there, you'll be able to use her often. And then the main grade 1 of the deck, we have Fresh Star Coral. So when placed, if the card in your soul is a coral, which it will be since of our coral starter, you can draw a card and put a card into the soul. So you start charging that soul early and cycling through your deck. And then when she's placed on rear guard, you can soul charge. And if you have a coral Vanguard, you soul charge again and she gets plus 5k. So the coral grade 1 and 2s are staples for pretty much any Bermuda Triangle deck, but for this one specifically, you get to take full advantage of the range of their effects, because whenever you have a coral Vanguard, they usually get a little bonus effect, and this deck takes full advantage of that, which is very, very good because they're strong cards already. For the grade 2s, we start off with one of Riddle Mysteria Luvine. She's good. I've been sort of fiddling with her. When she gets plus 2k for each face down card in your damage zone, and then if she hits a Vanguard, if all the cards in your damage zone are face down, you can soul blast 2 as many times as you'd like and flip the damages face up. So she's pretty good. You don't see her often, and honestly you probably would rather not run into her, but for right now she's a decent one of, and you can't complain. We have 4 Charming Maki or Make Pioleon. And when placed, if you have a Vanguard with Coral and its card name, you can counterblast 1, and if your opponent guards, they have to use 2 cards at minimum. Now this card is super good, especially late game. You're able to force your opponent to use more resources than they want to. And when you're dealing multiple crits and a lot of damage, and they just want to PG it away, now they have to PG and use something else in order to get that done. Or, you know, pretty much anytime you're attacking, they just have to use more resources than they'd like to. And anytime you can force your opponent's hands like that, it's a pretty good card. Next up, we have 3 from Colorful Pastoral Caro. And when placed, if you have a grade 3 Vanguard, you can soul blast 2, and then search your deck for that same grade 3 Vanguard and add it to your hand. This card is super good, super powerful. Anytime you can get more grade 3s in your hand, that's a good thing. Especially for this deck, your Coral grade 3, you do very well having multiples of. And it doesn't help to have another reride to get another gift, or to call out to rear guard for this deck. The more corals you have, the better. You'll see why later. And our last grade 2, best grade 2 of the deck by far, is Shiny Star Coral. Once again, she's a staple for any Bermuda Triangle deck, but she gets the real spotlight here. So when placed on Vanguard or rear, you soul charge 1, and if you have a coral Vanguard, you soul charge again. Once again, having multiple corals always helps. Her second effect on rear guard, once per turn you can soul blast 2, and she gets plus 10k, and if you have a coral Vanguard, she gets another 5k. So again, she's super good in pretty much any deck. You know, charging the soul, getting boosts, hitting for good damage. But with this deck, you get to soul charge more and get stronger than you would in another deck more consistently. Alright, grade 3 lineups. We have 4 Glaring Moon Miera. So she's your backup Vanguard. And if you don't pull Aurora Star Coral, you can place her, counterblast 1, and search for Coral from your deck. So it adds consistency. You'll always see Coral at some point. Ideally, you'd rather see her before this, but if you don't, at least you have this option to search for her. Her rear guard effect is when your Aurora Star Coral attacks, your opponent can only call grade 0s from their hand to guard. So again, you're forcing your opponent to use limited resources or resources they otherwise wouldn't want to, especially while you're dealing big damage and stacking crits. So this can really push your opponent to do things they would rather not. And we have 4 Aurora Star Coral. Now, she is the big beater of the deck. She does big damage and makes this deck flow. So if you Soul Blast 4 more times a turn, all of your Coral cards get +1 crit. So that's already awesome. Now her second effect, once per turn you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 2, and then you can bounce a card from your drop zone in your rear guard to your hand, and she gets +15k. Now she's already Soul Blasting 2 of the 4, so you really only need to Soul Blast twice a turn because she's taking care of 2 of them. And then she boosts herself to 15k and recovers a card from the drop zone. So she is ridiculously powerful. She adds all of the force to this deck. She makes it what it is and the aggressiveness that it has. So you have to run 4 of her, no less. She is too good and really just a dominant card right there. And then the last of, again, another one I've sort of just been fiddling with right now is Crystal Popstar Eve. She's very good. Her first effect is Act. Look at the top card of your deck and you can call it to rear guard. And then anytime she checks a trigger, you double the power and crit of that trigger. So that's super good. I don't know if it's necessary in the deck. Coral already adds crits to herself and your rear guard corals. And she already adds, you know, so much aggressive playstyle that Eve might not be necessary. But there are times where it's nice to have sort of, you know, a super aggressive card that doesn't rely on having other corals in case they get wiped out, or a late game little push there. So I enjoy testing it at 1. I'm not sure it's the most necessary, and you could probably sub it for something else if you don't have one. But for now, I enjoy having it there. So that is the deck profile. Let me know what you think down below, guys. I've been testing these, a couple decks for a while, so I have more coming. My friends and I are putting them together and starting to test them with one another and playing a lot. So I have more on the way. Let me know what kind of decks you would like to see, and I will see what I can do to have those for you in a quick manner. Thanks again for coming by. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.